My entire work history has been in like fraud prevention and trust and safety. Do you have some kind of like a spidey sense, but like a fraudy sense? You look at that dodgy passport and you're kind of like, it's a little pixelated around the date. Is this font the same? Like I would always tell my teams, like, you need to honor that pause a little bit. Like what stopped you and versus like the 1,000 other documents you looked at today. Like there's probably something there. There's probably a reason. Where we're at with AI and like generative AI, those tells are gone. Like they are like
Scary.
obliterated.
This is the Leading Detection Podcast, and I am Matt, your host, aka the Fraud Detection Recruiter. Today, this is one for the millennials and a little bit of reminiscing as I sit down with Jeff Sakasegawa, tapping into his wealth of experience across fraud, compliance, risk, from his time at companies like Google, Facebook, Square, all the way through to his role as trust and safety architect at Persona. We'll be diving into the rise of AI and what that means for deepfakes in particular, what that means for trust and safety within the movement of money, and predicting what we should be preparing ourselves for the next 12 months. Some good laughs involved. Enjoy. Welcome back to the Leading Detection Podcast. Today, we're joined by Jeff. Going to be great fun. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be a good chat. We've had some interesting preparation calls flow very nicely. So we're expecting great things from the call today and a super relevant topic, super relevant in your area of expertise as well. So we're going to tap into that knowledge. We're going to talk about deepfakes and AI and the rise of the use cases within fraud. So let's set a bit of a scene. Go on a timeline, if you like. How have we got here?
Oh gosh, big question. I think, again, referring back to the pre-work, just maybe it helps my mind. I tend to think a lot in dualities, kind of like we transitioned from there to here.
Yeah.
And how we got here today is, I think everyone has some concept of financial fraud, right? This could be traditional stolen credit cards, money laundering, like whatever that is in your mind. I think where we're finding out now is there's a lot of fraud that surrounds that financial wrapper, especially as it relates to identity, audio, video, in order to facilitate that aforementioned financial crime. So what has been an accelerant for a lot of historical fraud trends, those historical print scams you might think of, over email, is really taking a new life with audio, video, both today. So again, maybe more succinctly, or try to wrap this, fraud has always existed, will always exist, sadly. Good job security, but sad state of the world. Accelerated by technology, especially this year, my goodness. And also just kind of expanding different surface areas. But in the end, still trying to facilitate that financial crime.
Yeah, I mean, deception, fraud, it's in the animal kingdom. We are evolved from that. It's in our nature, unfortunately. Like you say, it's a battle on both sides. The digital world has kind of fast tracked that, right? Fraud years and years ago was a bit of confidence. You'd say you were someone that you weren't. And if you had enough bravery, then you'd probably get away with it and you were persistent and consistent. Whereas now digital identity has changed that dramatically. So when we're talking about digital identity, what do we mean? What kind of perspective do you have on a digital identity?
Yeah. And for context, I'm making my peace with it. Matt has helped me through this. I'm an aging millennial. So a lot of my references in today's conversation will be very millennial coded. Yeah. This is the first. When I started work, and this was at Google, mind you, I had a physical book. It's called the ID Guide. You could actually look this up online at Google or your preferred search engine of choice.
Yeah.
And it sounds quite quaint. Customers would fax images of their ID cards. So it's like a black and white fax. Quality was spectacular, let me tell you. I would check this scan against a physical book and look for markers on like if I thought this was legitimate or not. This was an actual job I had.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So everyone look at Matt's face. In 2025, this sounds like it might as well have been in like 1762. Digital identity, like that story seems preposterous, but it was from our lifetime. We are moving rapidly past the point where the expectation should be, prove my identity to you with a piece of paper or a copy of that paper.
Mm.
Really moving towards like math-based proof, like cryptographic keys, like all that good stuff that could be publicly accessible, like universally accessible. Like again, my was I going to say accent betrays me as an American,
Mm.
but we're well behind the Europeans and their digital decade and like digital
Mm.
wallets and all that stuff. It's really great to see that kind of
Yeah.
movement. I think we should all expect that's where we are headed.
Mhm.
What form or fashion that'll take, we're still on that path, but it's really based in that kind of that matte scrunch face of like, hey, if we kind of take a step back, I think we all want ubiquity for people to prove their identity. Paper is rapidly losing its value there, but we need to find a way to bring everyone, like enable everyone to come on that journey. And digital will be that format in the not too distant future.
Yeah, and obviously it seems like an obvious answer to go digital with all forms of identity, but what's the friction? What's slowing us down and slowing down the adoption rate?
Yeah. Sorry, a couple answers. The laugh is not for the question. It's a great question. It's more just expressing frustrations through a smile.
Yeah.
I think lack of a single standard
Yeah.
hurts. There's in the States, for example, there's your various app store fiefdoms that are putting out their
Mhm.
own digital licensors, right? So we have to work with all of those at Persona, and we do. But those states integrate with those at different rates. It's not all in one fell swoop. So lack of a standard is still something we'll have to reconcile with.
Mhm.
Secondly, is there some regulatory heft to enforcing the usage of this digital format
Mhm.
that's, again, gaining traction around the world, but still not ubiquitous? And then I think also, I always tend to think of this with the European audience, like cross border. I feel like I have to say cross border like 1,000 times in any
Yeah.
conversation. Durability of these things is also like something we need to sort out too, right?
Mhm.
So it's like, will there be a preferred format or formats? Who's actually using it? And
Mhm.
even if those two things are settled, do I accept Matt? Do I accept yours? Do you accept mine?
Yeah.
How pervasive is that? These are all things that are currently roadblocks. But I think if I'm trying to be positive, I'll try to bake in some positivity here.
Yeah.
We're working through it. We're figuring it out because I think people see, again, the utility of that. Okay, second millennial example.
Yeah.
I still have like when I go out for a nice drink after work, after we record our podcasts, Matt,
Yeah.
I like to have a cocktail, but I'll bring a physical ID. Maybe to a 22-year-old, that idea is repellent, where it's just like, why isn't everything on the phone?
Yeah.
I try to recognize like, hey, for a more digital native audience, like that's going to be the increasing, population in short
Mm.
order. We'll have to cater to that, and they'll kind of force that upon us one way or another.
Well, maybe that's just an age verification in itself. If you reach for your wallet, yeah,
Yeah.
you're old enough, and you go.
Oh,
Because like
pull
that's
through, old
yeah.
person. Yeah. Fair enough.
And I can hear the frustration in your voice. It's something that you have to battle with daily. This is all operational side.
Yeah.
We spoke a little bit about the next generation and how they want ease. Because if everyone wanted it, it would happen quicker. So what's holding us back on the user side? Why isn't there a stronger fight to go digital?
Yeah. I think a lot of businesses, like public or private entities that are trying to support this, have built their entire infrastructure on the prior world, right? Where there
Mm.
is a piece of plastic or paper that you have to accept, maybe a phone call, someone
Yeah.
calls, a fax. If you're Japan, Japan loves its faxes. So a lot of the infrastructure is built for a world that we're moving out of, right?
Mm.
So I think it's a classic. I hate to make this purely a financial argument, but if I'm an institution and I'm like, Matt, what percentage of our population is actually using this? Like at the
Mm.
moment, it's still like single percent. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait until this is kind of the economics make more sense, or we're actually gonna get an ROI out of this.
Yeah.
I find usually, that's what makes the world go round and comes up quite a bit. But what I would say, especially as verifications themselves, like digital verifications, online verifications, become more commoditized and like cost effective, I think that'll start to erode that a little bit.
Mm.
but still, it's wild to say like early days. I always tend to think of like Mary Meeker's. I don't know if you remember those, like Mary Meeker's like PowerPoint slides. You could look these up. Okay,
Okay.
third millennial reference. They're these great, though now dated, kind of like research documents on like
Mm,
where are we on like an e-commerce trajectory. The punchline is, even though in the moment you feel like we're so far in the future, like the future is now, there's
mm,
AI robots in our house, we're still like at the start of everything. It's hard to feel
yeah.
that in the moment, in like the chaos of like our news cycle or our ID or payments environments. But I say that to reinforce for the audience, these digital transformations are still so nascent, which kind of explains why so much hasn't been figured out and why a lot
Mm.
of the supporting infrastructure hasn't changed yet. But we'll get there with time.
Yeah. Do you think it might be, I mean, theoretically, and this is generalized and sweeping, when we sweeping statement when we talk about finances, that the younger generation who want digital, want ease, they don't necessarily have the buying power when it comes to making a movement, whereas the older, more experienced people who have a bigger nest egg, shall we say, they
Yeah.
want trust, they want security. So they're holding up. Would that be fair as a statement?
I think that's fair. Maybe another financial layer you can think about it is a persona. A word you would hear all the time is assurance. How much assurance do you want, Matt,
Yeah.
to either let someone maybe catch it? Like I was on the Heathrow Express recently, so like for someone to buy a ticket from Paddington Station to Heathrow, I don't know, maybe like a little lighter assurance. It's like I don't know, a 20-minute train ride. So
Yeah.
not that much. But let's say I'm going to buy some real posh real estate in London and I'm trying to wire £100,000 to my realtor.
Mm,
This is purely hypothetical
yeah.
situation. I would love to get here. Um,
You
uh,
wouldn't get anything in London for that price anyway.
okay. Well, worst closet in the best neighborhood. Maybe that's what I'm shooting for.
There we go.
Higher assurance, I would probably want multiple layers of identification that could prove yourself. So
Mm,
like maybe another, and maybe this is like a human coded response. Maybe you feel like currently there's many documents or avenues available to me in a physical paper signature in-person world that relays that confidence that I'm working with who I'm working with and we should move this significant amount of funds. Why I would say there are definitely strong ways to prove these again cryptographically, like digitally currently. Maybe that's just a human response where it's like, I trust the tech, but gosh, it's I haven't found that analog for like you and me meeting in a physical space and
yeah.
time and confirming all that together. Like we're maybe not there yet.
Yeah. It's pace is picking up. We hear it all the
Yeah.
time. It's unprecedented. It is a popular word across pop culture at the moment, but AI is generative AI when we're talking about AI in this sense is really ramping things up because deepfakes is a big issue. I mean, I'll throw in a millennial reference. I mean,
Here we go. All right. Thank you.
maybe we shouldn't admit it, but when we were getting into clubs and we were maybe a year younger than we should have
Mm,
been, and they used to take photocopies of passports, and a deep fake would be scanning your passport, changing the numbers with a pen, and then scanning the photocopy and then taking that. Yeah, you look close enough, and that would get you in. That was the original
yeah.
deep fake from my experience anyway. But when we talk about it now, it's been super ramped up. Right? Well, what's your thoughts on the pace of how it's changing?
Yeah, unbelievable. Like, yeah, it's a so for a bit of background, like my entire work history has been in like fraud prevention and trust and
Mhm.
safety. And I like something you would hear with people in that space is you have some kind of like a spidey sense, but like a fraudy sense. You look
Yeah.
at that dodgy passport and you're kind of like, it's a little pixelated around the
Yeah.
date. Is this font the same? Like you may not know exactly with 100% confidence, but like I would always tell my teams, like you need to honor that pause a little bit.
Yeah.
Like what stopped you and versus like the thousand other documents you looked at today. Like there's probably something there. There's probably a reason. Where we're at with AI and like generative AI, those tells are gone. Like they are
Mm.
like
Scary.
obliterated. There may be interesting new quirks. Like I was speaking at a conference and one of my co-presenters, Drew, if you're listening to this, this is your
Yeah.
example.
You
He
jokes?
there was there's a newish pope and he was joking, it wouldn't it be fun to make a fake ID for the new pope? And so it took me all of 30 seconds to generate this. But what was interesting is I kind of gave it the model, the instruction, switch out the photo, Matt, switch out the photo of this. I used like an example template,
Yeah, yeah,
switch out the photo. Instead of just switching out the photo, the model actually recreated the entire license and it did not do so faithfully. So it was like, okay, like, oh, weird. The state animal should be in the top right corner, but it's in the bottom left. So the formatting was wrong. So there's
yeah,
still like, even though the fidelity of the new Pope image was perfect, the license itself looks like not pixelated, fonts
yeah,
were
yeah,
consistent, all that stuff. It redrew the whole thing. And that was actually the tell that like this whole thing itself is wrong, as opposed
yeah,
to like these single kind of pixel, like small scope things.
yeah, yeah,
So I'd say that's kind of one just little anecdote. And then to further, I don't know, scare or inform the audience, what's important to recognize in an AI world, it's not just those visual cues, it's all the supporting signals you might have,
mm,
around like how the document is uploaded to begin with, the device intelligence you're getting, like all of this can equally be synthetic and
yeah,
generated like instantaneously, sadly. So you have to really question and verify what's presented to you because you can no
yeah.
longer take it on good faith that like what you're seeing is authentic.
Yeah, is there anywhere, because fraud prevention starts from onboarding, right? From the first interaction.
Yeah.
Is there any point, I mean, touch wood, is there any point in the process that hasn't been affected by generative AI and still
Oh,
pretty solid, or is it getting everywhere? It's bleeding into every step.
that is a great question because I feel like I usually get the converse where it's just like a statement of fact that it's already everywhere. Honestly, from what I've seen, it's pretty much throughout like any part in the customer journey. Maybe a way to make that answer more human readable is onboarding makes complete sense, right? And I think that's where a lot of folks index towards because it's, hey, I'm creating a record with this financial institution or merchant. So I need to create this record with them that
Hmm.
is fake or synthetic, and I know all the details around it, and I'll use that to commit some fraud. However, there's now so much ability to. Sorry, it's not lost on me that we're recording a podcast, and
Yeah,
our likeness and audio could be used to
yeah,
train a model to call a bank as me in my voice with a script saying like reset my password to this, update my contact information to that. So
mm,
it's like it's just like if you can't get in the front door, that's fine. You don't
yeah,
really
yeah,
even need the password anymore. I'm just going to go through customer service or what have you, any other avenue with high fidelity and just misrepresent myself as you. It's really truly is everywhere, sadly, but I think a healthy skepticism might get us through.
yeah. Do you think it is generative AI that's kind of pulled fraudsters to the identity layer? Because on the payment side, brute force doesn't quite work anymore. Again, speaking hypothetically, that cybersecurity is as strong as it's ever been. So it seems to be moving a little bit. So what do you think that pull has been?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's like it's one of those things where fraud always goes from like a high pressure environment to a low pressure environment. So I think you're exactly right. A lot
Yeah.
of like again, dated American reference, like we don't even have chip and pin, we have chip and sig, but at least we have the chips now in our cards.
Yeah.
But like it's non-trivial how much that up-leveled payment security and like fraudsters had to look elsewhere. I think in other areas in the like other payment technologies or like, your PSD2s or what have you, that's kind of made it more difficult by and large for fraud to get through. So
Yeah.
where else do you look? You know what? Again, in a world in which paper's still dominant, plastic's still dominant, not digital IDs aren't there yet.
Mm.
Yeah, maybe I'm going to try my fraud on the identity layer because there's just maybe less providers, less strict regulation, and I'm going to leverage that to the hilt. And I kind of mentioned this in passing, but that's not even to say if you don't consider just abusing like policies or procedures for like legitimate customers too. Like, so
Yeah.
the impersonation helps quite a lot in that respect that maybe wasn't as available to you call it like 3 years ago.
Yeah, and obviously the user is central now. It used to be, hey, fraud is a part of business. Banks, financial services, etc. would kind of not ignore it, but they'd kind of let it be a little bit because it was just a cost of business, and there was no retribution from regulators if fraud happened. Well, that's all changing now, and
Yeah.
there's a big push on protecting customer trust is huge. So how are we putting up a fight now? What how are we using technology to push back against fraudsters who are running away with the technology right now?
Yeah, I think it's this sounds overly simplistic, but a lot of that regulation just necessitates that you enforce checks. Put it some way, like I think everyone has had that experience online where you simply attest to your age. It's a kind of like torture the pub example. Like imagine going to your favorite pub and they being like, "Are you 18? Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Come
All
on in."
right. Yeah.
Money's good here. A lot of the checks are now like, okay, well, I want you to attest to that, but
Mhm.
now I need you to verify, and we'll probably check that against an authoritative database like a state or federal government that your age is your age. Additionally, I need to verify that the face you present on your credential is also the face I'm looking at. So it's like, I was going to say on its face, that'd be a little repetitive.
Yeah.
It seems apparent when you kind of say it out loud, like, wow,
Mhm.
it's enforcing the checks. Like, what a world changing idea. But honestly, if all right, I'll try not to make this some like anti-capitalist bend, but sometimes private markets, even though we believe that they'll enforce these things for like the
Mm.
sanctity of the market or preventing fraud, may not do it until they're forced to.
Yeah.
Let's just say that, maybe accept that as a possible truth.
Mhm.
I think that's where we're at now in a very positive way, where, you know, think about like social media bans for minors. Hey, check their age. Make sure
Yeah.
they're old enough to access these services or
Mhm.
not. Like these things, I think will only increase with, like you said, with speed, with scope. I'm all in favor of it, but a lot of it just goes back to like making the private market do the checks.
It's got to be more than just making sure the checks are happening.
Yeah.
What's happening on the tech side? What's changing the game in fraud prevention?
Yeah. Another word I will say that I'm sure the audience has heard a lot before is orchestration. It's just making sure all the trains run on time, right? So I like from like a persona perspective, I rarely have any belief that we're the only company supporting your efforts to fight fraud. Like it would
Yeah.
actually surprise me if we were the only one. That changes if you're depending on the scale of your company.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe another way to put that is you probably need to orchestrate across multiple technologies, right? Like all of these will be additive in some form of fashion.
Mhm.
And again, depending on your fraud du jour, maybe one different provider is carrying more water that day based on the fraud you're
Mm.
experiencing. So layers really help there. Additionally, building in fallbacks is really important, right? So not just that you verify at onboarding, but can you step up a verification in flight? So, like Matt presents, his dodgy passport
Mhm.
and it's not looking great. So maybe if we didn't normally require a liveness check, I'm going to step you up to that in the moment.
Mm.
So making sure that you can dynamically alter these flows in the moment based on intelligence that's presented to you becomes really important. If I'm like, I'm not a product person, but if I was trying to, again, go skew positive,
Yeah.
you kind of talked about like the user experience. Maybe this is a better user experience for people that are not presenting those,
Mhm.
signals, right? Let's give them the streamlined white glove service. But like if you're a bit fraudy or at least present some fraudy signals, we'll step you up. And then third, it's going to be a little bit of a dry answer again, but just like documentation and transparency is probably more important than ever. So like you can refer back to any particular verification or capture because again, I think if you believe our conversation today, it's harder than ever to understand the fraud that's happening in the moment.
Mhm.
It may become more apparent 5 minutes from now, 5 days from now, once you have a bunch of that fraud, like in your system, and you can refer back, like, okay, I need to kind of scour my environment
Yeah.
So centralized, logs of all this stuff become really important for that
Mm.
like retro look back because it's like sometimes only in the aggregate, only looking through link analysis can you identify this stuff, but
Yeah.
it requires that you have some source of truth to do so.
Do you think it'll ever get as close to near real time as possible, or is it always going to be retrospective and looking back?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I'll say this is my Jeff specific worldview. I think on an individual basis, real
Yeah.
time is like very achievable. Where it's like, hey,
Hmm.
I'm just assessing this thing in isolation. I think I do believe there's enough checks where you can do it relatively quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, using like a payments context, I remember all these conversations where people get so upset where it's like, oh, we're adding hundredths of a second to this transaction. See, there you go, Matt. I feel like I'm kind of having that same conversation again with identity checks where it's like, hey, can we like take a step back? It's a fraction of a second. I realize you add up all those fractions of a second, it's a lot of time, but like in the
Mhm.
moment, it's worth the trade off for the fraud benefits. Where I think it's going to be harder, I have a harder time visualizing the future of doing everything real time is again just this generative AI fraud that happens at scale quickly.
Mhm.
It's just there's just so many avenues with which you can kind of get overwhelmed with it from a business perspective, just like volumetrically that
Yeah.
it's like I feel like there will always need to be some sort of this, like, hey, this is verified, vetted as fraudulent. Go find
Mhm.
more of these things. Like that's just going to take a non-zero amount of time.
Yeah. I mean, in Jeff's world, is it worth it? It's a lot of investment, infrastructure, people, tools, getting hold of data. Is it worth it? Is it worth the couple of seconds? I mean, we could just put a thinking
Yeah.
loading single symbol and do
Again,
that.
I admit my bias. I say yes, always yes. To make this an economic argument again, responsible growth is sometimes the verbiage I hear leave my
Mhm.
mouth in conversations. Like as an anecdote, I've worked at like pre-IPO companies and we've had like very significant like material fraud losses. And usually some higher up says something to the effect of, Matt, I'm glad that happened when we were private. We didn't have to report on this. We can figure it out. This was just, it's not great that this happened, but we can learn from it and move on. Think of that where you probably want your company to get. It's publicly traded, it's big, it's in the news all the
Mhm.
time. And now you have to like say, actually, you know what? Those last 20 million signups we had, all bubkiss. We need to revise our figure. I tell you, growth isn't what it was, or
Yeah.
sales weren't as they were. Again, well, now I'm chuckling because bring back that meta scam example, but who's to say if I'm right? But I would like to believe you would rather report on just legitimate traffic figures
Mm.
that you don't have to revise or caveat later. But the only way you're able to do that is through the investment upfront. It's very much stitch in time saves nine kind of a deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think it's preparation as well? Because things are still a little bit slow. It's certainly cross border. There's the talk of certainly stable coin, if not
Yeah.
crypto coins as well, and the speed of payments there and the infrastructure. Tie that with generative AI and AI agents. Are we going to get there? Looking likely. So is this all preparation the closer we get to real time? Because a human's not going to be able to keep up, right?
Yep. No, very, very true. Yeah. I agree. It's a lot of prep work. Like I can tell you, I don't know how your conversations around stable coins go, but oftentimes mine end up with B2B cross border. It seems like that'll be the use case that'll kind of like
Yeah.
get people on board with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a jokey way of saying I think there'll be enough incentive for businesses
Mm.
and individuals to participate with this, even if they can't see it yet. And again, if I like have not illuminated this enough during this conversation, I don't know when that inflection point will be, but it feels awfully close.
Mm.
So you kind of want to ride that growth upward and like accommodate it as opposed to like, oh my gosh, the train's leaving the station. How do we do this? Yikes, yikes, yikes. So I guess that's my, again, appeal to product or leadership. I know you're looking at your numbers right now and they feel non-material, like share of
Mm.
wallet or share of signups or, whatever your KPI is, but it's going to flip.
Yeah.
So you kind of need to do the prep work now.
I feel like, I don't know who the quote is, but to think slow and act fast, I feel that's what the banks are doing. It's just going to be a switch.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. Shoot, I was going to make another millennial joke here. But I was going to say, like, one way you can think about that switch is, again, just recognize when I was going to go into my desk drawer and bring out like a physical check. I still have paper
I've
checks.
not seen one of them for years.
I know. When I still write 1 check a year, but I have it with me.
Uh-huh.
Again, like, say that to your favorite 20-year-old or 16-year-old in your life, and
Mm.
they might as well think like, "What? I don't even know what cursive is. Why are you using a physical document to do
Yeah.
any of this stuff?" Try to honor that a little bit where it's like, "Hey, how do you support that person that's, like, purely digital
Mm.
native that will never," sad to say, they may never go into a bank ever? Maybe
Yeah.
a couple times in their life? May like, physical paper, I mean, sorry, I'm, like, now I'm getting on my, like, digital soapbox, but, like, we really need to think about these physical constructs going digital. How do you support that digital world, and how do you prep to accommodate that?
Yeah. It's crazy to think we used to get incentivized to go into the banks. When I first
Yes.
signed up, it was the first ever CD.
Hey.
It was Top Loader, Dancing in the Moonlight. That was what was on, and you got that free for signing up for a bank. And you went in, you got your checkbook, and now it's a totally different game, and for the better. Because I don't know what the saying is, but you always think you've changed more in the last 10 years than you'll change in the next 10 years.
Oh.
It's like a phenomenon that human psychology, but we can't think that we'll change as much as we have. But we're on the cusp, right? And the speed of it, the demand of it, we just need to be on our toes.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I know what I was gonna say, sorry, I just thank you for that. Maybe this is consistent with your eloquent talking point. I was gonna say, what helps me self-soothe is I tell myself change is the only constant at the
Yeah.
moment, and the change is just happening faster than ever before, so you can prep and do all these things that I'm advocating you do, but just know the world's regulation, consumer
Yeah.
preference will change around us quite quickly. Just having the ability to change, be agnostic to certain technologies will only help you as kind of head into that next 10 years.
Yeah. Change in taxes.
Yeah.
So it's an optimal world, right? We're going into the digital world, but what do we have to be careful of? What lessons have we learned maybe recently about how things can go wrong when it comes to digital infrastructures?
Yeah, absolutely. So automation is like super helpful for like fraud prevention efforts. I think we also see how it can be used for ill, from
Hmm.
the fraud propagator side.
Yeah, yeah.
Why I went to that answer is if from a preventative measure and if I'm leveraging automation, something to get right is you need some source of truth. You need like verifiable facts to build off
Mm.
of, either to like tr- train your like AI agents off of, build your like automated workflows off of. Basically, you do not want to replicate incorrect information or incorrect decisions 10,000 times over. Like,
Yeah.
I'm guilty of this too, where I see the benefits of like, wow, if I can automate these fraud decisions, heaven forbid I can go home and see my family at night. That's great. Hands off the keyboard. Go, my little agent, go. But it can go terribly awry faster than ever.
Yeah.
So again, maybe try to tie up multiple things I've talked about today together. We should still use this technology, still use automation, but try not to make as many initial missteps and build off of missteps. I know it's
Mm.
easier said than done, but like
Yeah.
that's one thing I has complete mind share with me at the moment because you want to leverage this stuff, but like it can go wrong when done improperly or without like thought.
Mm. The future, do you think know your agent, KYC, KYB, KYA, is that going to be a thing?
It will be a thing, yeah, your KYAs, MCPs, let's get more acronyms in here. I
The
think it
business world
will.
needs more acronyms.
Yes, only if they're 3 letters, the
Right.
4 letters, a
Mm.
little
Yeah.
sketchy. I think it is. obviously, there can only be one Highlander, but I don't know
Mm.
what Highlander will be triumphant yet. So maybe in the KYA spot, like I can tell you, like I don't think you can see it with all the blurriness here. I'm a big sports fan,
Yeah.
and it's quite hard to get tickets sometimes at the moment for
Mm.
like high value events. World Cup's coming up. I would love to be able to like hand that over to an agent and be like, hey, get me tickets to like the World Cup quarterfinals or something. That
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
amazing. And I don't have to sit at a screen, sit in a 30,000 person queue, let the robots fight on our
Mhm.
behalf. I think there's enough impetus from the market where customers can kind of say like I can see avenues where I want an agent working on my behalf, either for purchases, recommendations on food or dining, or scheduling my day, those things where we're going to have to have ways to evidence like this agent took this action on my behalf, or you need to be able to tell the agent, let's talk about like privacy. Hey, do you accept the GDPR like cookie
Yeah.
consent form on this website? I have no idea what an agent would do now, but we'll have to figure that one out.
Yeah.
So sorry, I'm rambling. To kind of put a pin in this, yes, it's going to be very meaningful. We're still figuring it out, but I think we can kind of tie that KYA conversation to a lot of existing conversations around
Mhm.
identity, privacy, payments regulations. That might get us a good foot in the door on how to construct like different KYA frameworks, but
Mhm.
very much a wait and see moment. I'm monitoring the space, but it's, evolving very quickly.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to, I mean, early days, like you said, but what kind of indicators are you seeing with fraud prevention? A lot of it has been to detect bots, right? That was
Yes.
the use case. If you're a bot, you're a no. Your name's not down, you're not coming in. But now it's like, no, bots are good. How are we initially, what's the theory that's going on, the research that's going on about detecting a good bot versus a bad bot?
Yeah, no, it's a great comment. It's basically fractured a lot of historical norms.
Mm.
So you kind of touched on the way it went in my Jeff brain was like velocity checks. Like
Mhm.
when you think about bots, I'm looking at my keyboard right now. If I were to type something in, there's usually some amount of key travel. Maybe
Yeah.
I typo. There's just human variability built in that
Mhm.
you would expect. But now if I give an agent like I should expect it to maybe copy paste or complete the flow quickly. Where
Mhm.
historically I'd be like, this is like, why did this happen so fast? Like, this
Yeah.
is wrong. Again, we're in a world where part of that high velocity flow is legitimate. And then again, we're asking ourselves the difficult question, well, how do I differentiate between legitimate velocity versus
Mhm.
fraudulent velocity? At least where I'm sitting now, again, that's where more like link analysis kind of clustering can be really helpful. Where even if I, Jeff, complete this flow relatively quick for World Cup tickets, I'm probably only doing it, I don't know, single digits, like a couple times a day. Like I'm trying to get some sneakers or some tickets.
Yeah, yeah.
I still find it hard to believe that fraud wouldn't do this like 1,000 times over, 10,000 times
Mhm.
over. So maybe scale is a one word answer that you could look at that can be informative. But to your point, that's only one example of many. That's going to make it very difficult for all of us to like relearn or challenge prior assumptions. So it'll have to do a look back at what your existing philosophies are now and
Yeah.
how AI agents and automation is just breaking that.
Yeah. We could probably talk for a few hours because it's gonna rise on it because it's gonna think of the speed of having a designated agent and then
Yeah.
the speed of payments and then the amount of pay. I mean, there's talk of micropayments in the future as well for content. So the sheer scale and volume of transactions is gonna be absolutely crazy. But unfortunately, we are
Yeah.
short of time, but I think we should come back to this talk maybe 6, 12 months' time and see if
Yeah.
we can look back with pride or with shame about what we've talked about. But I can't let you go without asking, yeah, what are you looking forward to? What are you excited about next year?
Thank you. I'll say again, trying to go positive. I'll look for more smoother experiences. And by smooth
Mhm.
here, I mean faster, quicker, more digital native. I'm excited to see how the kind of overall identity market supports these things, whether it's digital IDs, quicker verifications, faster fraud checks, just doing it better. I'm looking forward to all of that because, again, I think there are many conversations like ours happening all around different pockets of the world. And I'm excited to see what, from a fraud prevention side
Yeah.
and trust and safety side, people come up with to help us, the humans who may get lost in the year of AI things.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it doesn't have to be this or that, right? It doesn't have to
Yeah,
be experience and trust. You can do it simultaneously, and I think next year is the year for that. I would agree with you there.
great. No notes.
We'll draw a line under the conversation there, Jeff. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
Until next time. Ciao, ciao.